Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from the X-Zone Broadcast Network's Southern Command Post in Chile, East Central Florida. And it's great to be back after our holiday hiatus. It was great to take some time off, but it's even better to be back with everyone. But I'll let you know, it's gotten a tad bit chilly down here in Florida. We're going to be in the 30s tonight, and I know my friends at Master Control in Hamilton, Ontario, are rolling their eyes right now. But for us, it's cold down here in Florida, and hey, it's snowing in Tallahassee today. So that cold front that's gripping the nation is affecting everyone. But tonight's show ought to warm everybody up. Got an interesting guest with us tonight, Miss Denise Lescano. Denise is a fellow Floridian over there near the Naples, Florida area. She is a professional psychic, spirit medium, medical intuitive, Reiki Master, with over 20 years' experience. She dedicates herself to the community by volunteering her time to victims' advocacy organizations, grief support groups for suicides, homicides, and sudden death, and she also works with veterans associations. She is believed to be the first psychic medium to have ever worked in the victims' advocacy world directly with mental health counselors and doctors. Denise has also been active working with law enforcement on the local, state, national, and international scene. Denise is often called upon to investigate and resolve hauntings as well as providing seminars across the globe. She's the author of a book titled The Messenger and is on the instructional staff of Synchronicity Japan, a center for higher learning in the field located in Tokyo, Japan. Denise, welcome to Paranormal Stakeout.
Thanks, Larry. It's great to be here, and we're trying to stay warm over here on our side of the coast as well.
Yeah, how low are you guys going to go tonight, do they say?
37, I hear, with a wind chill of 32, which for us in Florida, yes, it's a little bit, it's a little chilly.
Yeah, that's why I left Ohio, was to get away from that. At any rate, Denise, psychic medium, medical intuitive, you seem like you've got the whole ball of wax. How did you get into the field? How did you discover your gift?
It was pretty accidental, actually. And I don't think when you're growing up with a gift that you really discover or realize it until you get older. At least for me, that was the experience. Looking back on it, I knew I can remember things as a child. But I accidentally got involved, and the way that happened was I started using, believe it or not, tarot cards as a late teenager. I just became enamored with them. I thought they were fun. And then I discovered that after a while, I didn't really need the tarot cards at all. And I was actually working at a little psychic shop one day a week. just to kind of really just trying to find a way to use my gifts and put them to good use. I was just exploring what was out there. I had a regular full-time career. I've been a business owner my whole life, and it was something to just try. And a woman came to me and in this little shop, and I read for her. Her daughter had been killed in a car accident, and that brought me into a group that was connected with the Collier County State Attorney's Office. And to make a long story short, they didn't believe in me, and the grief counselor invited me to the group basically so she could handle any damage or fallout that came from this phony reading that she thought I would give. Okay. And that led me to go back to the group many times. And because it was connected with the state attorney's office and victims advocacy, you know, as you would know, this being former law enforcement, there was a lot of, you know, criminal activity, drug activity, all sorts of activities connected to these deaths, which ended up getting me involved in police investigations. And one thing led to another, and my name got around in circles. And I became so busy, I had to let go of my full-time job to keep up with it.
Well, just for the folks out there, in case they're not from Florida, state's attorney's office is the prosecutor's office, and that's what we call it down here in Florida. Now, you say you started playing with tarot cards as a youngster. What particularly got you interested in them, and how old were you?
If I remember correctly, I think I was 18 or 19. I was in college. And basically, there was a friend of mine, a female friend of mine, and she had them, and she read for me. And I thought they were interesting, and I just decided to buy some and start playing with them. Well, I did not find out until many years later, maybe 25 years, 30 years later, that actually I had 5 generations of grandmothers that were psychics and mediums, and they read cards also. But it was very kept a secret and hidden because they were from the Bible Belt area. And back in, you know, those days, it was seen, you know, a lot like witchcraft. So it was not something that they talked about openly.
But you didn't have any experiences as a child that kind of let you know you maybe have a gift?
I did have experiences as a child, yes. I did, but as a child, I really didn't recognize, I don't think, the extent of that gift, because you don't really know when you're a child, you know, that your experience is so much different than others. And for me, it was sort of the feeling, I remember feeling a lot like things that were very obvious to me that were going to happen, maybe with my friends or people around me, that they couldn't see. And I couldn't understand, can't you see that is so obvious? You know, they didn't know. So it was a process. It really was a process. I don't think I became very aware of what I could do on my gifts till probably about 24, 25 years old.
Now, did you receive any training or any mentorship from anybody, or is this pretty much just self-taught?
I would say mostly self-taught. I did receive a little bit of training. I did meet a medium very early on, and I took 2 classes with her. They were literally just a few hour classes. And then I did cross paths and meet and become friends with a very famous medium named James Van Prague. I took one of his seminars. That was really it. Those 3 classes. The rest was self-taught. But a lot of what I learned came from working in these grief support groups for sudden death and suicide and homicide, and through spirit, just teaching me many things. So the only mentor I had was a man named Alan Arcieri. He's also a famous medium down in this area. He did pass away several years ago, but he really only mentored me more on the business of being a medium and how to handle different issues that came up. But mostly, you know, it was self-taught. I mean, there's not a whole lot of places to learn this sort of thing, really. Now there is, but years ago there was not.
Okay. Now, you say you've worked with the prosecutor's office down here, the state attorney's office over there in Collier County. I forget what circuit that is. How did you get brought into their fold? And I know most state attorney's offices in Florida have a victim assistance program or advocacy program, if you will. How did they draw you? How did you get to be a part of that and their grief counseling? That's intriguing to me.
Yeah, well, because I went and worked at this little psychic shop one day a week to kind of see what other psychics did, I had no idea how to go about the business of being a medium. So I went there, and because of this woman who came to me, actually, she came to me for a little card reading, and I ended up, talking about her daughter that died. She was in the grief support group for sudden death with the victims advocacy program.
Oh, I see. So she invited you. Okay.
So when she told the grief counselor invited me in, and that is where I met the victims advocate that worked for the state attorney's office. She was the liaison between the prosecuting office and all the services. She referred people. So because I connected with her, I started working with her in groups. She referred me to other groups, and then that led to law enforcement, which led to more law enforcement, and it was quite accidental, actually.
Okay, it's clear to me now. So a victim actually brought you into the group. Now, what kind of, you said earlier that the victim advocate stayed there to do damage control on whatever damage she thought you were going to do, but she became a believer in what you were able to do for that group? That's it?
Yeah, the first group that I went to was 12 people. And just like an AA group, these groups are confidential. So people go in anonymously. Nobody knows anybody's names or anything about it. And the reason I was invited is because after she shared with the group her experience with me, the rest of the group wanted to come see me. So this woman felt if I came to the group, she would be able to control and protect the group. And then she realized that it was really real and I wasn't a fake. And so they asked me if I would continue to come. So I actually volunteered my time every month for about 2 years. I would spend 4 or 5 hours there. And over time, that just led to other groups, and that's how that's expanded.
And finally into law enforcement. Have you actually worked cases with law enforcement?
Oh, yeah, lots of cases with law enforcement. I've been over on your coast there in Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, in Miami. I've worked with many detectives over there on many homicides, some very high profile ones.
Which
I
ones?
go actually into the police building and we sit in the conference rooms and we look at the, the maps and, all of that. Yep.
Any particular, you said high profile homicide cases, any in particular that you can recall?
The most recent one, and I don't remember the name because I didn't think to even look it up, but you may even remember this. It was about maybe a year ago, and there was a woman and her daughter that disappeared in Miami. They were Hispanic. All I remember is the name was Hispanic. Well, and it was a woman and her daughter. I think her daughter was only like maybe 10 or 12, disappeared without a trace.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Remember that case, but you know what? We're coming up on our first break, so kind of hold that thought. When we come back, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about your work with law enforcement. Folks, stay with us. We're with Denise Lescano, and her website is www.deniselescano.com. Stay with us. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
And welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Denise Lescano, psychic medium, spirit medium, medical intuitive, and Reiki Master from the Naples, Florida area. Denise's website is www.deniselescano.com, and you can reach her also at denise@deniselescano.com. Denise, you were just talking about a high-profile case, which I actually do remember, a woman and her daughter disappearing. What kind of assistance were you able to, you obviously can't divulge a whole lot, but were you able to actually help them resolve the case? Because from what I understand, it's still a mystery.
It is still unsolved, yes. Basically, when I work with law enforcement, I describe my work as quite a lot like a canine. So my job is basically to point out a pathway or a trail of evidence to help police find evidence, because obviously they cannot prosecute or arrest or bring charges up on what a psychic says. They have to have evidence. So I try to lead them down the pathway to find the evidence. The problem with working with law enforcement sometimes is, in many cases, they're cold cases. So even if I can put all the pieces and validate a theory and they know that I'm right, if we can't find the evidence, as you know, because it's been destroyed or it's lost, it's very difficult. In the case of that woman that's in Miami, they have not been able to find the bodies or any sort of evidence. We all believe, I was there with 2 Miami detectives and 2 Fort Lauderdale detectives in the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. We all believe we know exactly what happened, and we believe we know where the mother and daughter are, but finding them is very difficult because the area they're in is a lot of very, very deep rock quarries.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got an idea where you're talking about. Also, let me ask you this: your work with law enforcement, how hard was it to break through to detectives, law enforcement officers? How skeptical were they?
That's interesting, because there is one segment of law enforcement that's very skeptical, and sometimes they'll come to me and they will not. Sometimes, they can't share anything because it's confidential, right. And I'm not law enforcement. So many times they sit there and they give me no feedback, but then they'll come back a year later and they'll say, well, a lot of what you said, we found, so can we talk to you a little more? Then there's other law enforcement that are very open, because what I find is a lot of first responders, policemen, ambulance people, firemen, have a lot of experiences themselves. I have had law enforcement tell me that they were holding somebody in their arms and literally saw, when the person passed away, the spirit rise. They've seen spirits. They've had a lot of experiences. So surprisingly, I would say, my estimate, and this is a guess, but on my experience, probably 2/3 of actual law enforcement are open, and they will share with me all sorts of things, but they will not share it with one another or their higher ups, because they don't feel that it will be respected.
Well, and I'll agree with you. I think a good detective is always going to be open-minded, never turning away evidence just because of personal biases or beliefs. So
they're also very intuitive. A lot of detectives, first responders, police, you guys become very intuitive in a way that I call clairsentience, which is like your gut instinct. You become very good at reading situations and knowing whether you're in danger or having a hunch to follow or a feeling about a person. So because you guys develop a high degree of intuition, for your own safety in a lot of cases.
No, it definitely is a learned behavior, I think, if you're not already blessed with it. What's your most significant case that you can talk about where you helped law enforcement?
I've worked on a few missing persons cases that they found living, which was very nice for me. I'm trying to think my most significant. There was a very famous cold. Well, I don't know if it's famous where you are, but there was a case here about 30 years ago of a woman and a little girl getting murdered in Cape Coral, Florida, and it was a serial murderer case. Mm-hmm. And I worked on that, and he recently was arrested. And there was also a recently very pretty famous case about an alternative medicine doctor that lived over here that was also murdered. I worked on that case. To be honest, there's been so many over the years. I've worked with a lot of cases, believe it or not, with law enforcement officers that have been killed. I've investigated a few cases of law enforcement that has been murdered.
Here in Florida?
Yeah, actually a few were in Florida with the Sheriff's Department. One of them was an ICE agent before Homeland Security became Homeland Security. It was just called ICE. Mm-hmm. And that was quite interesting. I've worked quite a lot. I don't do it really much anymore, but for a while I was working a lot with organized crime cases, and that was very interesting.
Okay, before ICE became ICE when it went Homeland Security. It was actually called immigration prior to that. But okay, were you able to resolve any of them?
We were able to resolve. There's a big federal case that I was involved in for quite a long time, about 2, 3, 4 years, of a federal agent up in New York, and it ties into the Fast and Furious case. And once all those documents were sealed by the last administration, everything stopped with that. But I'm expecting that to probably be reopened soon.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing that. My experience has been mixed. I mean, I've had cases where now, do you contact law enforcement yourself most of the time, or most of the time do they come to you?
I never contact law enforcement ever. They always come to me. Yeah, because go ahead.
No, I've had the opposite actually happen, where the medium will come to me, and often I'll be honest with you, and I have seen significant evidence that people have the gift, but most of the time in law enforcement, I haven't been as lucky with those providing information to me. So I can see where the skepticism may come into place, but I'm glad you've had some really good experience with law enforcement, and I'm glad to hear they're open to it, because we as detectives have got to keep our minds open.
Well, the reason that typically happens, the reason that they come to me is whenever I read for somebody, I give them a recording. So if the person is coming to me because somebody passed away with some sort of criminal activity, what I will say to them if things come through in the reading is I say, why don't you let, the detective listen to the recording. If there's anything on here, that's of interest to them, tell them to contact me. And I always work with police at no charge, because I don't really know how much I can help them. It's a volunteer thing I do.
Sure.
And so what will happen is they will listen to the recording, and I will be talking about some details that were never released to the family or to the media or the public. There's no way anybody would know it. How do I know that? So that's how they usually come to me, because they hear that.
Well, I have personally been involved in cases where two psychics have given us two totally different stories.
Yep.
Why does that happen? And wouldn't you agree that that's probably the one thing that creates severe skepticism for you, is when you've got two psychics, same case, different stories. Why does that happen, in your opinion?
Well, it's one of two things. First of all, there's just some psychics that are just not really psychics. I mean, like in any industry, you have people out there that are claiming to be something that they really are not. Mm-hmm. There's also people, like in any industry, psychics have different levels of ability. And a lot of people that are sort of amateur psychics and have an interest in investigation, they like to kind of inject themselves in things, but they don't really have a clear enough understanding. The margin for error, if you're assuming that the person really does have good ability, the margin for error is the way that we interpret the information. So for me, it's like I'm walking in and there's 5 pieces of evidence on the table. If I don't look at the file and I don't know the whole story, the way that I interpret that evidence could be wrong, because I can see, the information psychically super clear and very clear on what it is. But if I don't know the context or the backstory, sometimes the interpretation can be off. So sometimes police, when they work with psychics, because they're skeptical, they don't want to give the psychic anything. It makes it a little challenging for the psychic because we don't know exactly how to interpret this information in the context of whatever was happening. So I can't say specifically what happened in your case, but it's usually one of those 2 scenarios.
Don't you think also that it's our humans' lack of complete understanding of the power of our own mind, our own brain, along with our abilities to improve your skills, I should say, would also lead to different stories? Two people might have the gift, but also provide different stories. Do you think their life perception, their abilities, could influence that at all?
Absolutely. So any psychic that looks at a situation is going to see the situation through their worldview first. And then they're going to interpret what they're getting psychically through that worldview. So, and a lot of psychics, even though they have ability, they don't have a whole lot of a spiritual awareness and a bigger picture worldview. For me, I've worked in Japan for 7-8 years. I work all over the world. I've traveled a lot. I work with a lot of different cultures, people in different languages, different religions. So it's easy for me to step outside of my own worldview and just tune in, but for a lot of psychics, it's not. So it gets colored by that.
I agree. And I would submit training would also help that problem too. But look, we've got to take our next break. So hang with me, Denise, and you folks hang with me also. We'll be back in just a few minutes on Paranormal Stakeout.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
And we are back at Paranormal Stakeout with my guest tonight, Denise Lescano, professional psychic, spirit medium, medical intuitive, Reiki Master. I got to ask you, and we've been talking a lot about law enforcement, Denise. I want to now kind of switch gears a little bit to your work with victims. And I applaud your community service in helping folks, because that's the one thing that got overlooked many years, especially in my field, was the victims. What exactly do you do for victims? And I note in your bio that you work with groups with folks that have dealt with suicides, homicides, sudden deaths of loved ones. What exactly do you do for them?
So what I do is, for example, the suicides. I've worked with a group called surviving after suicide. It's not for somebody that attempts suicide. It's for the families that survive when they lose a loved one by suicide. And so in that group and in all the groups, I sit with the grief counselor of the group present with usually about 6 people. And I actually go around the group and I communicate with each person's loved one that's passed by suicide. And what that does is it gives the living the chance to have closure, to get answers to questions, to understand different things, but basically it's a tool for healing and peace and closure. If it has to do with some sort of a car accident or a drug overdose or a murder, there's always questions around all of these things for the family. So it gives them an opportunity to find peace and closure and move on, and also let them know that their loved one is okay. And when I sit there, the grief counselor is always present. So then the grief counselor can, integrates what we talk about into whatever counseling they're already doing. And if you're interested in my book, the foreword of the book is written by 3 of the grief counselors. One is from a drug addiction and AA group, recovery group I work with. One is from the suicide group, and the other one is the victim's advocate that I worked with at the state attorney's office. They all 3 write about how the work helps accelerate the grief process.
So you're not actually doing the counseling. You're just one part of the big picture with the counselor.
I am not a grief counselor. I am a medium. So what I do is I literally communicate with the person that is dead. And then I communicate with that person, and my job is quite literally like an interpreter or a translator. I'm telling the person in the group, what their loved one is saying, and then the grief counselor is the one that's, counseling based on all that.
Gotcha. Now, have you ever had an adverse reaction to one of those events?
As far as a person, you mean?
Yeah, as far as the person that you're reading. Have you ever had an adverse reaction at all? Or
occasionally, occasionally. And that is typically because there's some aspect of the truth that the person is either not willing or ready to hear yet. For example, a 22-year-old son dies in a car accident. This actually happened. And I would say to the mother, she's trying to figure out what happened. And I said, I think he took a little bit of Ritalin and he was drinking and smoking marijuana. And she's going, no way. My son never, ever did drugs. And I said, I'm really sorry to tell you this, but he was under the influence. The toxicologies take 3, 4, 6 months to come back. And then I get a call 2-3 months later that the toxicology came back, and yes, there was Ritalin and marijuana.
Okay.
So something like that, they can be very resistant because there's some aspect of the truth, that they just, it's hard to hear, as a law enforcement officer. It's hard to tell people things, like that sometimes.
Have you ever gotten it wrong?
I'm sure I do sometimes, I don't feel that the information I'm getting is wrong because I'm really clear and it's usually right, but my interpretation can be a little off. But I work with a group called AfterlifeData.com.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about them.
And the project I'm working on is called Voices Across the Veil, and these are 2 doctors, scientists that have been, studying me for, 2-3 years now. And basically, after I read for these anonymous people in the group, they get a questionnaire, and I'm told that my accuracy rate is about 88 to 92%. I think it's actually a little bit higher because sometimes the information that I deliver does not come to light until months later, and it's after we've already done, the review of the reading. But it's pretty accurate most of the time at this point in my life and career.
Well, then I got to ask you a question, and I get it. Okay, I want to make that clear.
I'm not perfect. I don't walk on water, so I'm sure I get some things wrong. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, and here's the question people ask. I mean, I'm sure you've had people say to you, "Well, if you can see the future, if you can talk, give me the lottery numbers."
Oh yeah, all the time.
Okay, I'm sure. Okay, why, if you're able to see the other side, why can't you see it perfectly?
because people are misunderstanding why I have this ability.
Okay.
And that question is coming from a very ego-centered place. This ability is not about me having, material things or sort of, like cheating my way through life. This ability is strictly for helping people heal and move forward and, sort of stay on task in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a gift from God. Whatever you choose to believe in as the afterlife. I work with all religions, but it is not, it is spirit working through me. So I'm not in control of this. I can't control spirits or the spiritual world. That is a much bigger thing than me. So first of all, I can only see what I'm allowed to see. Second of all, I have no interest in playing the lottery. I never did. People ask me sometimes, for that. And I will tell you, I live in a house with, 4 sons and a husband, and I always say I'm a statistically high, really good guesser. I'm pretty darn good at knowing who's going to win elections and games and things like that. But it just, it's really not meant for that. So I don't even use it for that. Even if people ask me, I don't do it for things like that.
And that I get also. But you just made an interesting comment about statistically. Is any part of your readings based on statistically, or is it strictly spirit speaking to you?
It is strictly spirit speaking to me. I am a very not logical person. I was not good in statistics. But when I say I'm a statistically good guesser, it's like I'm sort of joking to you because I'm psychic, and because I've been in I'm like a guinea pig in so many research projects, that I am a statistically, high good guesser is what I like to say. But no, it's all intuitive.
Tell me a little bit more about Beyond the Veil, the research Voices Across the Veil.
Yes.
Dr. Grega, tell me what that research project is about. Is it a research project, or is it just the opportunity for people to get readings? Which is that?
Oh no, it's a research project that they've been doing for 3 years, and it's actually just being funded by a much bigger organization. So people come on and they give a small donation, which goes to the research project of $45. They get a reading with me online in a group online. And after that, they fill out a questionnaire about the accuracy of what I said. Mm-hmm. And they have it completely tracked out. They have statistics about every little aspect of what we do. And it's not just me. There's a few other mediums. I'm the longest medium that's on there, and I'm the more maybe prominent medium. I do a lot of their interviews and things for them, but there are some other mediums as well. So they're tracking all of us.
What's the bigger organization?
I believe it's called AREI.
Okay. And what is their goal?
They are a afterlife research institute or something. They're pretty big in doing afterlife research, and they fund a lot of other projects. There's actually quite a lot of scientific studies out there. It's just never, for some reason, taught in universities or the mainstream. The West, we're like a little bit sort of spiritually retarded. I mean, we really are, because you go to the East and there's so much more open-minded. There's so much more. I mean, the Army has been doing experiments with psychics since the 70s, but for some reason nobody ever talks about it. There was a Stargate project run out of the Army base in Aberdeen, Maryland, out of California.
Stargate, like the movie, you mean?
No, it's called this. You can look it up. The Stargate project was it was closed down under Bill Clinton, actually, but it took place, I think, under 2 or 3 presidencies, where the CIA and the Army had like 24 males that they were using as remote viewers, and a few of them were even paid to do it.
Oh, okay, it's remote viewing. Okay.
Well, it's remote viewing. It's psychic. It's all sorts of things. They did all sorts of things, but they were trying to use them for remote viewing. And there's a lot more going on than our government or our Western culture would like to say.
That's a whole different show we could do on that by itself.
Exactly. And even when I work with law enforcement, what I'm referred to as a CI, I am a confidential informant. I don't go in there and they say, oh, we're working with a psychic, because they won't even really say that publicly typically. They'll just say I'm an informant.
That's an interesting, because in all my years, I've dealt with a few folks that had been willing to help and claim they were psychics. I've never referred to them as a CI before, which is a common term in our business. That's interesting. Well, we're just about ready to come up on our next break for a second. When we get back, Denise, I want to talk about your work with paranormal investigators. So I'm really anxious to hear what you do with that. Folks, stay with us. We'll be back after this last break. Stay with us. Paranormal Stakeout.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
And we are back for our last segment tonight with Denise Lescano, paranormal professional psychic, spirit medium, medical intuitive. Her website, www.deniselescano.com. Her email, if you need to reach out to her, is denise@deniselescano.com. Also, I'd like to invite all of you to check out the terrific programming on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. And come on over and check out my website at www.paranormalstakeout.com. You can also reach me at www.paranormalfbi.com, my team's website. Would love to hear from some of you folks to give me some thoughts on the shows and some ideas you might have for future shows or anything else. So give me a holler. Denise, as we get into this last segment, I've kind of saved the paranormal end of it for last. You seem to do the whole gambit. You work with law enforcement, you help grief counselors, but you're also a paranormal investigator. Is that correct?
I am, and I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do is work on a haunting, I have to say.
Well, when I'm as sensitive as a rock, I like to say. I'm sure I've got, over the years of being a cop, I've developed a little bit of intuition. But generally speaking, I rely on stuff I can put my hands on, see, and feel. How does a psychic medium work in an investigation? Tell me how that works for you.
Well, I get calls literally every week, probably at least maybe a half a dozen calls of hauntings. It's one of the biggest things that I get called for. I have spent the night in 2,000-year-old haunted monasteries. I spent the night in an empty 200-room haunted hotel in Orlando. I've been flown to people's haunted houses all over the world. I love doing it. Basically, what I do is I go into whatever's being haunted. Sometimes I can even do it by the phone, and I connect with the spirits there. And I find out why are they there. And my approach to dealing with a haunting would be very much like you as a policeman. I go in, I recognize I have a very disturbed spirit individual, an individual in a spirit form that is in a house that for whatever reason or a building doesn't want to leave, is terrorizing people. And I talk to them to try to convince them to move on. And I work with spiritual helpers on the spirit side. But that's how I do it.
Well, you say you get flown all over the world, and I want to ask you about Japan here before we part tonight. But why you? Why Denise Lescano? Why did they search you out to help with hauntings?
Apparently, I've just become very well known for it, I guess, and I don't know. I'm just known for it.
Okay.
Who else are you going to call? I guess if you're having a haunting, the likely thing to do is call a medium. So. Okay. But I have I always say I have a guarantee that if I, work with the haunting and it happens again, I'll retreat, like an exterminator. But I've never had a call back where something didn't stop, unless a person is intentionally doing things like playing with Ouija boards or something, right, opening doorways. But if it's just like a random haunting where they moved in somewhere or something's happening, I've not had anybody call me back. It always gets resolved.
How many cases do you think you've done? I think, would you say 2,000? If you had to guess, how many cases?
On paranormal, on hauntings?
Paranormal hauntings. Yeah, right. Just on that.
I don't know, hundreds.
And you've never ever had a callback, huh?
No.
Mm-mm. Wow. Okay. Now, do you?
The only time a few teenagers, couple teenagers, I've had to work with 2 or 3 times, but that's because they were doing things they shouldn't be doing. You know what I mean? They were playing with tools and opening doors. They watch little witchy shows and they try to, do stuff that they don't really, As I always say, there's bad neighborhoods, and if you're not a police, you don't go into those neighborhoods. Do you know what I mean? Because you don't understand them. It's not safe. There's bad neighborhoods on the spirit side too.
Do you ever work with a team, or are you a solo act when it comes to the paranormal investigations?
Solo act. I like to work by myself. But I don't work by myself. I work with a lot of spiritual helpers. I have spirits on the spirit side. Mm-hmm. I actually have several policemen on the spirit side that work with me, as a matter of fact.
Well, okay. Help me then understand. You have a couple of police officers on the spirit side. Are they past police officers that are past? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Police officers that I've known that are passed over that help me with those things sometimes.
Interesting. Now, most of the time when I've spoken to a medium, when they speak of spirit, they're speaking of an entity that doesn't necessarily have a name or a figure.
Oh, no, I speak to specific spirits, somebody's son, somebody's grandfather, the man that died in the house that was a hoarder that doesn't want to leave the house. I talk to the actual spirit that
well, I guess what I'm talking about for the helping side of it, I understand you probably speak to the spirit that is staying there, but you actually have folks that you've worked with before that help you. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I have. Yes, absolutely. In fact, when I worked on the serial killer case that was in Cape Coral, where he was recently arrested, 6 or 8 months ago. Do
you remember his name
There
at all?
was a police chief that was on the case years ago that had since passed away of a heart attack, and he was sitting there helping me give the detective information about the murder.
But it wasn't information they were able to corroborate. Oh, they did make an arrest on it. Was it based upon your information?
Well, I told them that they were going to find him with DNA evidence. And at that time, when I did the reading, he wasn't in the DNA database yet. And I said, I know you're going to find him with DNA evidence, and I see him in jail. And so they found him with DNA evidence because he got arrested for something totally, like a domestic or something.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I just find that fast. This is the first time I've ever heard that a past member of the law enforcement community actually helping out in a case like this. I find
I was engaged to a policeman as well, so he helps quite a bit. He passed away as well, so I know a lot of policemen that they definitely do help me for sure.
And how often are they able to give you specific enough information that an arrest can be made? I would think if you're talking to a cop on the other side, man, he'd be all over giving you the exact information you needed. So how often does that happen?
I don't know. To be honest, I really don't know, because what usually will happen is after I work with the police, and I give them certain information, sometimes they'll come back again for a little bit more, or I'll get an update later on. But it's usually, like you're a policeman, you're a detective, I'm not. So I'm working with you. So it's not like I am solving the case. I'm giving information like anybody else would that's contributing to a team of people that's solving the case. So I can't really say how much I'm directly involved in, getting that, because even if, like I said, even if I can say, okay, this person did it, this is exactly what happened. If they don't find evidence to support that, they got to find the evidence.
Oh, I totally grant you. I just, and maybe I'm looking at this a little bit differently, but if I'm passed, for example, and I'm able to communicate through you, I'm going to know exactly where to tell you to go and what exactly you need to solve that case, because I was a detective, and I'm just wondering if it's not how it's working.
Well, yes, they can do that, but if the evidence is gone, the evidence is gone.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like if they can't find it, even if they're saying go here, it's this person, this is what happened, the gun is here, and I'm describing all the people and everything exactly. Even if the police go there, I mean, if they don't have the probable cause to get a warrant or go in, or they can't actually find, something.
Oh, I grant you that. I guess I wasn't clear on whether or not you're able to give that kind of specific information. That's very fascinating. You're the first.
I am able to. For example, like one of these, these people, the woman and the daughter. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of rock quarries in a particular area. Without them giving me any information, I pinpointed the area. They pulled it up in the Google Maps. I described it to a T. I said, that's it right there. They said, this is exactly where we pinged her phone before she disappeared. So I'm right on the money. The problem is these rock quarries are 80, 100, 200 feet deep. They're massive.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So they can't even find the body. You know what I'm saying? So even if I can say, there's a gun, this person was murdered with this gun. I mean, and you're talking about gang stuff, like a lot of the stuff I do is gang and organized crime. They get rid of all that stuff. They get rid of the phones, they get rid of the guns, they throw them in a lake. I mean, it's just hard to, it's hard. Okay. And unfortunately, most of the time, by the time law enforcement comes to me, they usually come to me because they have nothing, The one woman in Miami, that was unusual because they came to me only, I think, 5 or 7 days after she died. And they came to me because there was a little girl and they were afraid, or not after she died, I'm sorry, after she was missing. They were hoping to find her. But most of the time, by the time they come to me, it's been months or years and everything is gone. The people are gone.
And I've run into those cases myself, so I can't dispute that at all. Listen, we're about out of time.